Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, is one of the most glorified minds in tech. His productivity system is hailed as a secret to his success. We see the headlines, we hear the praise, and we're told that his simple but focused system is what helps him operate at a level that most of us can only even dream of. But is his system truly effective? Or is it just yet another productivity system that looks great on paper? As someone who's been a big advocate for analog tools and journaling and getting a lot of time offline, I believe that a simple pen and paper is truly powerful to bring clarity to all the chaotic mess that's in an entrepreneur's life. My days are completely random most of the time. It's creative work, strategy, meetings, client drama, team drama, all sorts of mess. But my journal, my pen and paper, is what helps me keep completely grounded. So this is why I've decided to analyse Sam Altman's productivity system. Not as a skeptic, but actually as a true believer in its principle. Does his famous method hold up to scientific scrutiny? Is it even appropriate for anyone outside the big CEO suite? So let's break down the system. Let's look at the science behind why it's worked, and let's truly determine who this system is built for. So before we analyse the rules, we really need to understand the why. Why does a system work, and why is it so important in this big world of digital technology? First, let's talk about Sam Altman himself. So as the former president of Y Combinator and now the CEO of OpenAI, this guy is the definition of world-changing ambition. His philosophy on productivity isn't about fancy apps or these complex systems or color-coded calendars. He's actually really famously against them. In fact, he's called all these things, the modern day tools that everyone uses, all the productivity gurus on YouTube, he calls them disguised procrastination. His whole argument is that truly effective people don't spend their day tweaking fancy systems, they just pick the most important thing and they just do it. So Sam Altman's approach boils down to a few core ideas that, on the surface, are incredibly simple. He believes that what you choose to work on is actually the single most important bit about productivity. So it's not about moving faster, it's about moving in the right direction. So he's known for using very simple paper lists and just avoiding things that do not matter. So to me, this sounds like the perfect cure of the modern day problem of being busy but not actually being productive. We live in this weird state of founder whiplash, or even more broadly, just professional whiplash. One day we're a project manager, next day we're in customer service, next day we're a strategist. Focus is fractured and energy is shattered. And we spend our days feeling like we've run an entire marathon, but yet cannot point to a single thing that we have actually meaningfully advanced. Altman's system promises clarity over this entrepreneurial mess and impact over activity. So it challenges the digital-first mindset and brings us back to this analog, more deliberate way of thinking, which is pretty ironic considering what company he actually runs. The big question is, does this minimalist philosophy stand up to the big complexities of a modern-day workflow? So to analyse it properly, we need to distill Altman's philosophy into a clear set of rules. So after digging through all of his podcasts and interviews that I found out there, I've realised that his whole system can be essentially broken down into 4 core commandments. So rule number 1 is the analog list system. So this is his most famous method. No fancy apps at all, just pen and paper. So Altman actually uses lists for everything. So he actually maps out his entire year with a list, his entire month, his week, and then a day. And the daily lists are key. So you're supposed to write it out in the morning and start 1 to 3 priorities for the day that are essential for moving your goals forward. So the goal is to basically get all of those thoughts out of your head onto a page so that you've got really clear, tangible goals for the day and you know exactly what you're supposed to be focusing on. So rule number 2 is direction over speed. So focus on impact. So this rule is a complete mindset shift. So Altman always emphasizes that it doesn't matter how fast you're going if it's in a worthless direction. So this rule filters every task through the question: is this task truly important, or is it just urgent? So it's a direct attack on some of the productivity habits that are out there, which suggest that you should get all the small little tasks out of the way just so that you get this little dopamine hit of accomplishment. So with this rule, only the starred, high impact items truly matter. Rule number 3 is schedule time to think. So this is the one that feels somewhat weird and counterproductive to anyone who considers themselves busy. And I know that's pretty much everyone, but especially for busy entrepreneurs, they're thinking, how can I just have thinking time? But this is what Altman does. He genuinely and intentionally leaves space in his calendar just to think. So this isn't daydreaming. It's a dedicated time for reflection, for reading, or speaking to people who help him kind of see the bigger picture and move things forward. It's how he decides what's actually important in the first place. So the goal is to work on the business, on those strategic goals, rather than in the business, in the day-to-day operations. Rule number 4 is delegate or avoid. So this is the final and perhaps most difficult piece of the puzzle. So Altman actually advises that you should just completely avoid all tasks that you don't like or you aren't good at. He actually calls them a painful drag on morale and momentum. Kind of depressing. So the rule is, if it's a task that you don't have to do, so it's not only you that can do it, then you must find someone to delegate it to. And if you can't find someone to delegate it to, then you need to ask yourself, is it actually worth doing? So this also means getting really ruthless about saying no, that powerful word that I struggle with all the time. You must get really ruthless with saying no to non-critical requests or meetings that you aren't sure what they lead to. So there they are. Those are the 4 rules. An analog list, a focus on impact, scheduled time to think, and a mandate to delegate or avoid. So now let's look at the science. All right, but before we do delve into that science, please do hit that like and subscribe button below. I'm always doing videos like this, bringing you effective strategies backed by real world results. But now let's get to the science. So Altman's system does feel intuitive, but actually it's really backed by neuroscience and psychology. So let me run through some of the different science that backs this up. So with rule number 1, as a journaler, I already know this, but the science does genuinely back it up. So writing by hand is actually neurologically different from typing. So research from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology actually shows that physical handwriting increases brain connectivity. So the intricate motor skills that you get from physically forming those letters as opposed to typing, they actually activate more areas of the brain that are associated with memory and learning. So this process is called encoding, because handwriting is slower. So it forces you to process and summarize information, which then boosts the information retainment and recall. So getting tasks onto paper also leverages this psychological effect called the Zeigarnik effect. So this states that our brain actually remembers incomplete tasks more than it remembers complete tasks. So writing a list actually creates this psychological tension that your brain really wants to resolve. So therefore it helps you keep your priorities top of mind. And this all takes me back to when I was revising for my exams. And we used to have all these big textbooks from school and university that we used to read, and I just could not absorb any of that information. So even if I were to just copy the textbook and just summarize it in my own notes and in my own handwriting, I'd write it out, and I'd be able to absorb so much just from writing from that textbook. And then when I read it back, I'd actually be more effective reading it back from my handwriting. There was something about it that helped me absorb that information. So while I've been researching all of this, it kind of makes me feel better that actually there was scientific backing to my method of revising for exams, and I wondered why it worked so much, but it does. And that's why you have to do what works right for you, but there is actually science backing up this analog method. So the direction over speed rule is a direct antidote to multitasking. So whilst we think that we're being efficient when we're multitasking, what we're doing is actually context switching. Research from the American Psychological Association shows us that actually even brief switches between tasks can reduce our productivity output by up to 40%. Honestly, mind-blowing. So every time you see that email ping up in the top corner and you switch and you toggle your window and go respond to that email, your brain has to then disengage, relearn a new set of rules, and this completely depletes cognitive resources. Studies have even found that heavy multitaskers are actually worse at filtering out important information, and actually working memory now is depleted because of it. And this used to be me. I used to think I was so good at multitasking, and I realized I was actually destroying my working memory by doing it. So by forcing you to star just 1 to 3 items, Altman's system minimizes the use of context switching and pushes you more to a state of deep work. So scheduling time to just think might seem really counterproductive, but actually this is where our brain's default mode network happens. So the DMN is basically a network within our brain that becomes active during times of daydreaming, of rest and reflection. And it plays a really crucial role in creative thinking, connecting seemingly unconnected ideas and processing future scenarios. So this unstructured time allows you to really creatively problem solve and also get to those strategic insights that are basically impossible to get to if your brain is constantly in reactive mode. So it's not doing nothing, it's actually giving your brain the space to do its most innovative work. So the delegate or avoid rule is actually a way of tackling a very real phenomenon that is decision fatigue. So our ability to make high quality decisions is actually a finite resource, and that gets depleted throughout the day. So when you're forced to make thousands of small, low impact decisions, then you don't really have much energy left to make those big decisions that truly matter. So when you consciously delegate or eliminate all the tasks that don't really matter, you save your most valuable resource, which is your cognitive bandwidth, to actually use those on the high leverage tasks. And this is why the most successful leaders that I've ever seen create systems and resources to basically reduce their cognitive load every single day. So, after breaking down the philosophy and the science, who do you think benefits most from Sam Altman's productivity system? The answer is surprisingly broad, but the system isn't for everyone. I would say there are 3 main groups. So the first one is leaders, entrepreneurs, and strategists. So this is the obvious one. If your primary job is to set direction and to make few high-stakes decisions, then this system is tailor-made for you. So it forces you to focus on the big picture and then gets you to eliminate or delegate those little jobs that take you away from your core responsibilities. Number 2 is creatives and knowledge workers. So writers, developers, designers, basically anyone whose job requires deep focused sessions of work will actually find this system a complete superpower for them. So the emphasis on single tasking and scheduled thinking time will actually help them be able to creative problem solve much more accurately. And number 3 is anyone overwhelmed by digital distraction. So if you feel like your life is overrun by notifications and digital inputs, then this system is like a complete reset for you. So this forced simplicity of an analog list will break this cycle of reactivity and help you reclaim the focus of your attention. It's like a firewall for your focus, you can think of. However, this system may be less effective for those roles which are inherently and necessarily more reactive. Think about an ER doctor or a live event producer or even a frontline customer service representative. So whilst the principles of prioritization are still valuable, someone whose job is unpredictable and reactive all day is not really going to do well with picking just 1 to 3 priorities and trying to stick to them. So it's not always going to be appropriate for everyone. So what is the final verdict on Sam Altman's productivity system? It's really a profoundly effective framework. And not because it's some productivity hack, but actually the system really aligns with how our brains actually work. Its power is actually in its simplicity, which then forces discipline. There are no fancy features, which means that you have to supply all the focus and actually determine what really matters. So ultimately, I started this analysis as a fan of pen and paper, basically. But now I end it with this renewed appreciation for why these simple systems really do work. So Sam Altman's system isn't really about a paper notebook. It's about a fundamental philosophy. It's shifting your mind from being busy to actually being effective. And in a world drowned by digital noise, that philosophy isn't just practical, it's a lifeline. So what do you think? Have you ever used an analog system to boost your productivity, or is there a digital system that you absolutely swear by? Share your experiences in the comments below, please. I'm always curious to see what works for others. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.